if I need to out someone who's coming at me, I'll fucking do it. Like I'm so petty with this shit that I will stop editing for a day and just spend my entire day to track a motherfucker down and put them on blast.
Yeah.
Like people don't know the depths that I will go in order to just put someone on blast.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. This is another episode of the Scoped Exposure podcast. Please welcome the smartest man in hardcore, the one who's been keeping this scene going all through this weird pandemic, and I mean it when I say it, the GOAT, Singh of Hate5six. You know him, you love him. Thanks for coming on the podcast, man.
Yeah, thanks, Spencer. It's been I feel like we've been talking about doing this for a minute, and like my schedule's always super off the charts, and then I think it worked out perfectly with how you're trying to wrap up your season. So yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I remember right when we were starting this whole thing, I remember hitting you up. This was Wild Rose 2019 when you were coming up to do it, and we were like, do you want to be one of the first guests? And you were very granted you were very, very busy that weekend, so opted to do that. But I kind of prefer that we've been in the trenches enough that I feel a lot more confident to do this interview. And thank you so much for giving me some of your day and to do this.
Yeah, absolutely.
So obviously don't need to, most people who are clicking on this or listening know who you are. I'm super excited to be chatting with you. Obviously, you've done a handful of interviews, largely around a lot of different things about what you do, BMX, archiving, a lot of the nerdy stuff. And I am really excited to be asking you some questions around just like archiving and, filming bands and some of those things. Because most of the times when I hear those, a lot of those things either aren't thought of because they don't know those kind of things. So yeah, very excited. Before we get super into it, got to do our bev check portion. I should have asked if you have your drink all queued up and ready to go.
I'm all ready, yeah.
Okay, so I'm making it standard that the guests go first, and then I'll follow suit. So tell the folks at home what you're sipping on.
So I'm drinking I don't know if they have this up by you, but it's a Main Root ginger brew. It's basically like a ginger beer, but not just a ginger brew. I went a little special for you. It's the spicy ginger brew. That's the name of it.
Oh, very cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Caffeine free, 12 fluid ounces, non-alcoholic beverage. So that's what I went with.
Yeah. That must be local, or at least in the States, because I've never seen that before. So I appreciate the spicy nod as well.
I figured you would appreciate that.
It was funny because my wife was like, so what are you checking for Sonny's podcast? And I was like, I honestly wasn't trying to get anything super crazy. I don't think I've actually checked a yerba mate on the podcast ever. So this is pretty like a classic. A lot of people would know that.
Yeah.
I needed a little hit of caffeine, but not like overkill, and that would keep me up all night.
Right.
So yeah, that's what I'm doing.
It's what? It's 6 p.m. by you?
Yes, it is.
It's 6, okay.
No, it's just after 7.
Just after 7, okay.
But I have like a tolerance with caffeine where I can have like a chai tea at like 9 o'clock and I'm good to go to bed at like 11:30 midnight. But if that was my wife, she would be up till like 4 a.m. So it's
got it.
It's very.
All right.
What's your caffeine tolerance? Since we're on the topic.
That's a good question. When I was in high school and like staying up to play like video games with my friends, we basically had like LAN parties in like my basement or our friends' basements, and we would basically drink. I don't know if it's still around, but it was called Balls, BAWLS. It's like a high caffeinated drink that a lot of gamers were drinking at the time, and we would basically like chug those, and I would feel like my heart pounding. It was probably not healthy, but I don't drink a ton of caffeine these days, to be honest. So whenever I do drink it, I honestly don't really. I don't notice the effects as much as I did when I was younger, but I don't know. Yeah,
no, that is very strange. And shout out to anyone that drinks Balls. I can't believe I'm even saying that, but here we are. So Sonny, I don't know if you got a chance to listen to any of the other episodes kind of leading up to this, but I always ask any new guest on the podcast kind of the same intro question. Tell me about how you got into punk, hardcore, fill in the blank, heavy music. I'm a firm believer of context and how those small moments, in your child years that led you on this path to, obviously being a big influence to people getting into this. But yeah, tell me some of those formative records, moments, and yeah, we'll start there.
Yeah, so about like 92 or 93, I was like 6 years old. My older brother, there was a thing called Columbia House where basically you would tape a penny to this envelope or something and mail it to them, and they would send you back 10 CDs. But it was a gimmick because they would then charge your credit cards. But my brother at the time, he was like, "Oh, I'm going to get all these CDs for free." But then my parents ended up getting hit with the credit card charge later, and he was gotten in a lot of trouble. But he ended up picking like a bunch of different types of bands. He got like Hendrix, Soundgarden, Rage Against the Machine, Dr. Dre's The Chronic, like I think even like an Ace of Base record, James Brown, Greatest Hits. So it was a whole eclectic mix of music, and my older brother and older sister and I would just like sit there listening to it, and that was like the first earliest experience I had with like falling in love with music, and particularly because it was like a bond that I was forming with my brother and sister. I didn't realize it at the time, but just like listening to music with them and getting excited about it with them was really special. So my brother was the one who first introduced me to music, and then he was starting to get into like classic rock and metal, things like Zeppelin and Sabbath. And so he ended up taking me to Ozfest 2001, I think.
Okay.
And I remember I saw Hatebreed on the side stage, and I was like, "What the fuck is this? This is awesome!" Around the same time, my friends in high school were starting like punk bands and things like that. So I was going to like a lot of local shows, everything from like punk, ska, terrible hardcore bands. But that was my introduction into that world. And then obviously I've had a huge obsession with like Rage Against the Machine. So at the same time, I was also collecting like bootleg video recordings of them playing at various like venues and clubs, like mid 90s, late 90s, early 2000s. So it was a confluence of like falling in love with just enjoying music with people. Again, my brother and my sister, and then wanting to get involved in my local scene by just going to shows and picking up a video camera and filming here and there, thinking that like maybe one day people will watch these videos. But at the time it was like 2000, 2001. So there was no way of sharing the videos. So I was basically collecting all these tapes and being like, well, I don't know what to do with this.
Right.
But having this obsession with collecting like live VHS tapes. Because when I was collecting those Rage tapes, like there was one tape I got that had like Inside Out and Gorilla Biscuits and Youth of Today. And that was my introduction to YOT and GB, and I was like, holy shit, what is this? So that's kind of where I came from. I came from this like culture of collecting, being so obsessed with collecting tapes, and then wanting to like use the video camera as a way to be a part of my local scene, and then kind of just everything grew from there.
Yeah, like anyone that knows you knows that you're like very much into Rage Against the Machines. Obviously, the fact that like I was listening to some of the interviews that you did leading up to COVID. So it was always like, talking about like going to see Rage and stuff. And then like all of that kind of like, imploded and all those kind of things. But I do think that it's really cool that even just like that very beginning of like, hey, send in this penny, and then getting in trouble with your parents because, their credit cards being charged. There's a big generational gap, but it reminds me of some of those, the mobile games that like kids are getting, and they have the in-app purchases, and then their parents check their credit card bill and it's thousands and thousands of dollars.
Basically the modern day equivalent.
Right. Yeah. So, you transitioned it nicely there as far as like also seeing people at your school who were doing punk bands and wanted to be part of that, but maybe not having. Did anyone in your family have like music background, or was it like no one really touched guitar, piano, or anything like that?
No one. My sister played like a viola in middle school. I played the saxophone in middle school. It was not good at all, but that was probably the extent of it. My mom was like she's a fine artist, so she draws a lot, but she's not musically inclined. And my father's an engineer, so definitely if there's any musical inclination for me, it's not from him.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Some of that is funny to like see how, like either your parents are always in the same line of doing either a certain kind of work or something, and then one person in the family just like veers off and goes a completely different direction. So that's interesting how you kind of you became this big music influence in your family, but didn't really have any fuel pumping into you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like that's a nice transition. You've talked about on a number of interviews on like how you got into filming and things like that. And, just to, make sure that we hit on all the points that I want to, um, you know, I wanted to ask more on the fact of like, you've talked in other interviews on how like you didn't invent documenting or filming bands. There's been plenty of people before you that have been filming stuff, and you talk about like I was listening to the interview you did with Joe Hardcore where you're talking about like archived music is kind of like an iceberg where there's like YouTube is the tip of it, but there's like tons of stuff and all these other places. But I wanted to ask you, despite not being the one who invented it, you definitely, I think, popularized it in the sense of making it super accessible and obviously inspiring people like me and David Tan and all these other people who are filming all around the world. So is that a little surreal for you to be like, I was just a kid that was like filming stuff for my friends, and then it like grew into this big thing and this big essential like part of what hardcore is in a modern day?
Yeah, it actually is, because looking back, I remember when I was 14 and in high school, and my dream at the time was I'm going to film these local bands in my high school, and my motivation for doing it was maybe one day these, or and I was thinking at the time more immediately than too far in the future, that like these videos would be used for the band to like reach a new audience, whether that meant like handing out tapes, like VHS copies of the shows I recorded to random kids in the high school or whatever it was. In my head, I wanted the videos to be a medium through which other people could discover that band live in a sense. Because for me, like, and I say this a lot in a lot of interviews, but in my estimation, music is meant to be enjoyed in two ways: one, live, and two, with other people. You can listen to a record, it's fine and great, but for me, and I think a lot of people would agree, but seeing a band live, you can't replicate that just by listening to them on a record. Being in that room and being around other people who are having a like emotional reaction to that music is something that is very empowering. And so for me, I've always been attracted to that aspect of music, and I wanted to capture it, and not just capture it, but capture it in a way that is true to that emotion, and then to put it out ideally so that people can at least get some two-dimensional sense of what a band is, what it's like to see a band live, because that can motivate them to either pick up a record or go see them the next time they come around, or even inspire them to start a band.
Right.
I think there's power in seeing the band in that live context, because again, when I first started, I was collecting VHS tapes of shows I couldn't even attend. But even that alone was getting me so excited about, wow, I got to see that band, or I need to just get involved in music. So there's something very potent about live recordings, and I really wanted to do what I could to document it. And so looking back, I feel like what has grown with Hate5six is the vision that I had when I was 14, which is simply a platform that highlights live recordings and is a way for bands and fans to like connect and interact with one another. It definitely far exceeds any expectations I had. Like I never wanted to do this full time, to be honest. I always like wanted to keep it separate, but now that I am able to do it full time, knock on wood, I've been able to do a lot more and improve the quality of the work that I'm putting out there. So I don't take it for granted. Every time I think about it, I take a step back and think about it. I'm like, damn, like this is the dream that I had, and then some.
Yeah. I watch a lot of different YouTubers, and they always talk about like having the coolest job in the world as far as like making content, and like, I think hardcore goes a step beyond as far as like cool factor. So, definitely having that that option of like you wake up and you're like, my job is to to work on these tapes today, or like work on these sets from this big reunion show, like whatever it is. I think that's very, very cool. A really influential like piece that you shared, and this was like 4 years ago, was that documentary that that Keith Glidewell did. I actually thought that you did it originally, but then I realized that I guess like he had sent it to you to, or I don't know if you were hosting it on your YouTube or however that was working, but just a lot of the quotes that you said on that like really resonated with me when I first started filming shows like back in 2015, 2016. And yeah, just like, I remember, when he did a little like short interview with Justice from TUI, and he was like, you know, um, I just want to make sure I hit this quote for quote, but he's like, a music scene is only as real as someone documenting it. And like, even just watching that today to kind of refresh on it, it feels so true, because at the time, like, I was seeing things in my scene in Canada, but like no one was really here documenting it. And as soon as that started happening, like now that like that we're doing that and we're kind of in the motion of that, people are like thinking about Canada as this like awesome place to be. When I always think like, well, if we didn't start doing this like, so many years ago, where would things be? So maybe that's a good transition into this question, especially during this weird time. Like, do you think content creators like us or like certain photographers rely on bands more, or do bands rely on us more when it comes to making stuff? Because sometimes I talk about things where if bands and people that were taking photos didn't exist, if we didn't exist, a lot of hardcore things would just be show posters and like graphics and things like that. But like, there's so much power in sharing a clip of a set or a photo from a show. So where does your mind go with that?
I think it's a two-way street, but ultimately there would be no content. There would be no video content or photo content if there were no bands. So right. At the end of the day, all of this hinges on there being bands existing and being worth like documenting. So even if there were no photos or videos, I think obviously shows would exist. They probably wouldn't be as well attended, or I don't know. I mean, as someone not in a band, I don't have the actual concrete evidence. A lot of bands have told me that the videos have helped them on tours, just bring out new kids to see them. And the kids will be like, hey, I saw your video posted on this other site or on YouTube and made me want to come out. So I think like anecdotally, there is evidence that videos do help like bring up a band's popularity quite significantly depending on the band. So I do think shows, because hardcore existed well before, before right. There was like a prevalence of documentation, and it will continue sure. Even if there is like something happens and there's no photos or videos ever again. But if anything, I do think that the content has helped grow the community in terms of into like this global thing. That's like, when I was in Japan, I was talking to a couple of people there, and they love New York hardcore. And like, I don't know how many of those New York hardcore bands ever came to Japan, but like those people found out about them through just like buying records and probably finding like live recorded tapes. So yeah. There's something, going back to what I said, there's something powerful about being able to distribute that because it gets people excited. So at the end of the day, I really think that it is a two-way street, but it really does depend more on there being something to document. Because sure. If I wasn't doing this, I would probably be maybe documenting like BMX more. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I think to Justice's point, like a scene is only as real as, as much as it's documented. And you can't, like, for me, that documentation makes the most sense when it comes from within that scene. Like I wouldn't expect someone from the outside world to come in and document like hardcore shows in a way that is like honest and true to the scene.
Sure.
So it's important for someone from within a respective community to do it. So if I wasn't documenting this, maybe I would have fallen into something else. Like if I was, I don't know. Like I don't have another example besides BMX, but I'm sure if I was like a avid like chess player, would I be documenting chess matches? I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah.
Who knows?
No, I feel like that is a good point, just as far as like, having a local like to do that versus like, hey, should we hit up Vice to film this hardcore festival? Like it would look totally different. I'm sure there'd be a lot of like cuts and things to make it their own thing. And that was something that I always appreciated with your work, was like, I was watching a lot of other live sets growing up, and lots of people would either not record the moments in between songs where the vocalist is saying something, or maybe they just cut it out. But you were always like, you almost set a standard where it's like, here's the band, there is like nothing to be cut for like 99 out of 100 times, but you get to hear those moments where someone is sharing about something that they're passionate about, or like sharing that something that's been weighing on their heart. So I think all of that has been like super crucial as far as like, you know, hardcore is cool and all, but like here's the tone and here's the message ultimately, as cheesy as that sounds.
Yeah, part of that was I just got lazy. If you watch like the first like 50, I think, sets on Hate5six, I was chopping them up into individual songs.
Okay.
But then I got to the point where it's like I don't know every set list, and every band's not, they don't have time to give me the set list. So I was chopping it up, and I got to a point where it's like, you know what, I'm just gonna leave it uncut. And part of it was convenience, but then like the more I started doing it, I was like, you know what, like this is a literal second for second documentation of the show. So if a string broke in the middle of a set that was fire, we all had to wait a couple minutes for that string to get changed. So
Yeah.
in order to convey that to someone watching on a screen, like I'm going to make, I mean, they can obviously fast forward, but I'm going to at least make them like they had to do some work to get past it. Like they're if they let it play, they're gonna have to sit through what I sat through in that moment. So I obviously like I stopped filming fights. There's certain situations where I'll just cut it, but for the most part, I just let it run, and it's mostly one out of convenience. But like philosophically, it's to like force the viewer to be more in the moment that everyone else in that room was experiencing.
Yeah, and I think that almost like puts some pressure on. Like I've seen that a number of times where, you know, either if it's something I'm filming or watching of yours, it kind of puts pressure on the band, you know, whether it's like the band is really serious and maybe there's like, hey, we do need to kill 3 minutes while this person changes the bass or, you know, changes the snare out. And then some of those like moments really matter to like, you know, you kind of, you know, put the sizzle on. You're like, okay, I like gotta have some flavor to this set versus just like shout out to all the bands, blah blah blah. So no, I think it's serendipitous with a lot of those things, where it's like it's you know, if you just cut it and then that was happening and then you have to punch that in and whatever, it's kind of like it's a fun thing to see unravel itself in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always interested in what the band has to say, whether it's about the song or if they talk about something that's relevant, because like they might talk about something that happened to them that day, and it might not be something that's seemingly significant, but looking back, it's like it's a story worth, I think, documenting. So
Sure.
I'm all about like documenting, because the way I mean, a lot of people don't like the speeches, whether it's political or not, but the way I look at it, it's they are an artist on stage, and whatever they say on stage is a part of their art and should be documented as such.
Yeah. I feel like that's a great transition into this question. You know, you've been doing Hate5six for 13 years now. Is it 13 or is it?
It's officially 13. I think I launched the site in what, 2008.
I think you said 8. Yeah.
Yeah, but I started filming in like 2000, 2001. But
Okay.
unofficially, it was basically just here and there. But officially, 2008.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Which is crazy. Like, you know, I was thinking about how long I've been doing scope for, and it's like, yeah, we're into like almost 5 years now, and it's pretty crazy to think about, like, even just like, you know, on 13 years, like what else have you done 13 years straight? But you know, I'm sure you've seen a number of different things at shows, like everything from crazy flips and, you know, things like that to just like, I never thought I would, you know, film this. But what, in your opinion, has been one of the wildest things that you've seen at a hardcore show? This is hardcore. Fill in the blank with whatever it has been, like something that still perplexes you.
That's tough. I mean, This Is Hardcore, where there was a kid wearing like he was dressed up as a whoopee cushion, which is kind of funny. And Joe Hardcore had like a fishing net. So
an oversized fishing net, I think.
There was a power trip set at one of This Is Hardcore's where people got, like, 2 women got on stage and were like twerking. That was pretty remarkable.
Oh, okay.
I filmed a couple engagement announces or like proposals on stage at various shows, which have been interesting. I don't know. I was telling someone recently that I filmed someone like botching a stage dive and they ended up being paralyzed, and that was something that was like actually like traumatic for everyone who was there, and obviously the person who was injured. So I've seen a lot of like funny stuff, some emotional stuff, and then also like some really serious things as well, like people getting knocked out, teeth getting kicked in. But yeah, I would say like that whoopee cushion and like the twerkings, the stuff in that realm. I'm like what's going. There was a kid at some This Is Hardcore's. He would come. I forget his name. He would come every year dressed as a lawyer, and he would mosh with his briefcase, and he'd wear a suit. He was wearing a suit,
Right.
and would be moshing for Bane with a briefcase. And I remember everyone thought it was a joke, and I went up to him like the second or third year that I saw him. I was like, "What's this all about?" And he's like, he was actually a lawyer, and he would come from his firm, straight from the firm to the fest, and he had nowhere to put his briefcase. So he would just like.
Just mosh with the briefcase.
But everyone thought it was a gimmick. So if you watch some of those Bane sets from This, I forget the years, but if you dig through it, you'll see like I would always pan to the crowd and like look for him and zoom in, and you'll just see him in a 2-piece suit, two or 3-piece suit, and just like going off. So yeah. I always enjoyed him. I hope he's still out there somewhere, dressed in a suit.
Yeah, definitely when I saw the whoopee cushion like with Joe Hardcore and the oversized fishing net, I'm like, this couldn't be written for a sitcom or any TV show ever. It was too perfect. The other one that comes to mind is I had Vatican, two of the guys from Vatican on the show, and we were talking about all like the crazy nerd aspects of their band. He's like, yeah, it was pretty cool, like with the guy moshing with like the power glove at This Is Hardcore. Because, we talked about the whole LDB fest, everyone's moshing with switches, and it's like people are like, for your band, seem to just bring all this expensive, like nerdy, like gear memorabilia and are just moshing with it with no.
It's part of it, yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. Speaking of gear, I think that's a good segue into this next question. So, traditionally, a lot of the shows, and you've used this camera for many years of Hate5six, but it's the Canon XF100, and I think it's pretty interesting comparing that camera rig setup as far as like a normal, I'm just going to a regular hardcore show versus, what I use, what a number of other people use. Because I think you started like so much earlier than the rest of us. So we were already in the age of DSLRs and mirrorless cameras. So has that always been something where you always wanted to use that camera? Because what's crazy is that, for whatever kind of show setting that you're walking into, it can kind of cover all the bases. So talk to me about just like how you didn't want to, change up, not with the times specifically, because that camera can still do just as good a job, if not better, than some of the other stuff that newer companies are putting out right now.
Yeah, so I've used a bunch of cameras over the years, but when I officially started Hate5six in 2008, I was using a Canon GL2, which is the camera that BMX users or filmers were using, skateboard filmers were using. So I was drawn to that. And so when I was ready to upgrade from there, I wanted to stick with the same form factor, which is just like a camcorder style, because I like the way that it's shaped, the way that I can hold it in a couple different ways. Like, I mean, obviously you can build out a rig with a DSLR, but I can hold it like this. There's a top handle. I like the way that the body feels and the weight is distributed across it. Cause I do a lot of this, where the camera's up in the air, but then I bring it down low and I'm like whipping it around. So just the form factor and the way that the weight is distributed across the body, I like a lot. When I was first seeing DSLRs come onto the market for being used with video, I was not excited about the short recording time to like the memory cards. Yeah. And I also didn't like how like, kind of the jitters were showing up, because like when you're holding a camera, your hand's going to shake a little bit. If you're holding a phone, you'll notice like there's shake. So I like the way that the Canon and those camcorder style body cameras sort of dampen those jitters. And I feel like when I'm watching a DSLR video, those slight jitters are, for me, really noticeable. And it's not the panning jitter I'm talking about. I'm just talking like the very slight like jitter in the hand, whether maybe the filmer was drinking too much coffee. I don't know before the show, but maybe the average person doesn't notice it, but I see it and I'm like, oh, I spend so much time like fixated on that like slight little motion. And I feel like maybe it's the rolling shutter. I don't know. I just feel like it's way more pronounced with the DSLR. So that's one of the reasons I kind of, the Canon is not the best in low light compared to a DSLR, but I do like the graininess to it. I like the grain that it produces. And that's why I just like stuck with it. Mm-hmm. During the pandemic, I ended up switching over to a Zcam E2, which is what I'm using now. And so all the live streams I've done so far have been with the Zcam, because It's actually built for live streaming. It's a cinema camera that has built-in live streaming capability. So it's easier for me to do that. It supports 4K. It's kind of like a cube. It's like a brain, like the red, they call it the brain. It's like a cube, and then you add like a lens to it, add a handle. You kind of build it out to however you want. So it's way different than my Canon. So when shows come back, if they do come back, I don't know if I'm gonna go back to using the Canon or stick with the Zcam. So we'll see. But at least for now, all the live streams, I'm still sticking with this. But I still have the Canons. Like, I'm sure I'm gonna find a way to keep using them.
Right. No, I think what I always admired in you know, any lens that had a focal length that you could get like really close if you're standing on stage, and really like, you know, if you know a vocalist is having a really like, you know, dramatic performance or something, like you were always able to like get right in there and really like capture that, versus like, oh, like this, my lens can only zoom in this much and then we're back in the wide. But no, that's interesting. Sorry.
And if you, I mean, like you said, if you watch a lot of my stuff, I'll go everything. I'll be like high and wide, and then I'll come down like almost immediately low and like zoom in tight and try to like rack focus on whether it's the drummer or the vocalist who's like on the ground. Like, there's a lot of flexibility with that Canon in terms of allowing me to get like a wide range of like a focal range. So it's that's the other reason why I love using that camera. It's for me, it's easier to do that than, I mean, all the DSLR lenses I have are nice and sharp and things like that, but I'm not able to rack zoom or focus as quickly, I feel like.
Yeah. And I think it's more of a flex to be like, you know, not every show that you do, especially in a festival setting even, is a multicam thing. So instead of being like, I got a ton of cameras, like to be able to capture all the specific moments of a set with one lens, but you're like zoomed in here and then you're wide and then you're zoomed in on these people and doing that, I think that's way sicker. And you know, I'm thinking back to that Closet Witch set that you did, where it was more like you're flying around and, you know, just going in between that, but again, you're matching the energy of that band to the video shooting style. So that was very cool. It's interesting to, you know, you brought up your I guess your more your COVID rig with the Zcam, but yeah, that was interesting to see too, as far as like having you know, you're doing these like intimate like studio sessions with You're the Knife and No Options and some other bands, and you're like literally just flying around with this like fisheye, and it still had that level of Hate5six energy with the whip pans, but it had its own like new coat of paint to it in a way.
Yeah, I don't think I can do the same whip pans with this, at least current, like in a live stream setting. So I was talking to Jeff from Feet First. He's like, you're not going to be able to do your whip pans with your new camera. And I'm like, so I feel like in a lot of ways, this COVID thing is allowing me to like reinvent in a little way, or just try something new. Because I feel like the style that I had, I've really like mastered it, and I could do it in my sleep. And I like the challenge of trying something new.
Yeah. And
so there's plenty of live streams right now where it's just a camera on a tripod and that's it. But like you said, I'm trying to capture at least somewhat the energy of like a Hate5six video, especially with like hardcore bands. A live stream doesn't always translate. Like I've hit up a lot of bands, they don't want to do it because they need an audience. They need that energy, that feedback in order to play at their like highest level. Yeah. So I'm trying with the streams that I'm doing to at least like bring some of that energy into the video. So that's why like the main shot will always be me floating around like on a gimbal and like moving around. Maybe I don't think my pants are definitely not as fast, but still trying to like bring the viewer into that room with me as if it were like at a show where I'm on stage and trying to bring the viewer into my perspective.
Yeah. I feel like that's a great segue as well. You know, you were talking about the iron arm, and everyone knows you for that, as far as like, you know, fuck a tripod, just be sunny. But I don't feel like people talk enough about your iron bladder, because you've talked on social media and all these different places where you'd be filming promcore, you'd be filming 20 bands and be like, no bathroom breaks. And I'm like, I probably just have poor genetics with like my dad and things like that, because I remember specifically a road trip from Edmonton to Winnipeg, and he was like, we were stopping like once an hour. I was like, what the fuck is going on? And this was numbers of years ago. But, you know, even just in the last few years, I'm like, you know, once I'm like properly hydrated, like it's multiple times a day. So like, how did you master just like, I'm not going to go to the bathroom today at all?
I don't know if I just like a freak. I mean, I'm 100% a freak, so I don't know if it's that or if I'm probably partly a masochist. I think there's that element too. So I think like when I'm at a fest, I just tune it out in a way. Uh, Same goes with like not eating. Like I don't have time to eat at like a fest, so I'll either eat a quick snack or I'll ask someone to come up in between sets and give them some money, have them go run out and buy me something and bring it back, and I'll try to like nibble on it. But I feel like I get into a mode or like a zone where I'm like, my job right now is to document everything because I'm like obsessive with it. I think it's the obsessiveness that overtakes every other basic human function, like functional need to do. So
Right.
I really think it's something like it's some combination of just all that.
Yeah, no, it's crazy though, just like thinking about some of those things, and like right now I'm shooting real estate, and there's been times where I'm like, I just have to like drive to this shoot, and especially with COVID, it makes it all weird just being like, oh, I'll just stop in this gas station, use their bathroom. Like there's all these extra aspects of it, but no, I really think I do think you're right that the adrenaline of just like filming the show overpowers the need to drain the dragon, as they say.
Although I feel like when shows come back, I'm worried that I've lost the muscle memory to do this, and maybe I've lost the bladder control and the stomach control. So I don't know. When shows come back, it could be game over for me. We'll see.
Yeah,
TBD.
yeah. We don't want to speak into. We don't want anybody wetting their pants to document the bands. Like that's hopefully not going to be happening for anyone here. This is very. I was like, I don't think anyone's asked Sonny about.
No, because I mean, people don't really think about that. They just
No.
think like, oh, he's filming every band, but like the implication there is like, oh, he's literally not leaving the stage. Which
Yeah.
means like there's no time to do anything.
Yeah, and that was like definitely something that I noticed at Wild Rose. It's like you're like kind of planted in your spot, and you're there kind of until the last band plays, which I think is really cool. And a lot of people that don't film bands, they're like, oh yeah, like I can do this, and they could be like washing their hands and hear the band playing, and even if it's a band that they like, they can still run and catch it. But like for us, it's like such a crucial thing to like be rolling as the band's deciding to start. Like there's so many important things where I've missed like even just like the first couple seconds of an intro, and it's like it still pains me to think of those specific sets.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you too, you were talking about, during this time of COVID and having time kind of to work on other things and experiment with other things. I know like you've talked a lot about the skycam and things like that, and I've definitely seen some more advancements with that over the last few months. Did you want to give an update for the people at home who are like eager to see that it come to some kind of light eventually?
Yeah. So the Skycam, for anyone who's been watching, I basically about 7 years ago I started building this Skycam, essentially what the NFL uses for the overhead shots at a stadium. Some people hate it because I talk about this a lot, so I've gotten a lot of criticism, like I was fucking talking about the Skycam again. But it's finally done. Basically, it's a cable suspended contraption, motorized, remote control. Basically, the camera sits on this thing. It's you can suspend it between 2 points, and it can fly. It can basically fly across this cable, and there's a gimbal attached, so the camera can do a 360 pan, tilt, all the good shit. So I built the first version in 2013-ish, and I blew a motor, and I never finished it. So it kind of just sat on my wall as like an art piece. And then COVID hit, and I was staring at it, and I was like, you know what? I got nothing to do. Let me finish it. So I finally finished it early summer. And so I ended up I ended up repurposing some motors and gears that are built for a electric skateboard. And then I bought a 3D printer and started fabricating some of like the specific parts that I needed. Because the first version that I made, I used a CNC plasma cutter. I basically designed it in SolidWorks. I plasma cut it, but there were still a couple components that I needed. And like at the time, I think 3D printers were probably around, but they were still pretty expensive. So I bought a 3D printer at the beginning of the pandemic. And then I just like fabricated the last few parts that I needed, and I finished like doing all the electronics. And there wasn't any serious like programming involved with this in this current version, but just finished the basic electronics components, and it works. And so I have some test footage that I haven't posted yet, and I've actually been planning on doing an update. So Probably the next couple of weeks, I'm going to go. My mom's house has plenty of room where, 'cause I live in the city, so there's not a lot of space for me to like
Right.
set it up and film something. So I'm going to go to my mom's house in the suburbs and like set it up and just film like a brief walkthrough about how it works, show some test footage, and show people that yes, I finally finished this fucking project that's been haunting me for 7-ish years. So I don't know when I'll get to use it at this point. You'll see it. The footage that it gets is actually really cool, but now it's a question of where can I use it? Like if I use it at a fest, I'm going to need to like get a pretty serious insurance policy because it's this like this aerial thing that's flying over people. So there's a lot of liability involved with that. But
Right.
I really want to try using it to film like mountain bike riders or trail riders. So suspended between two trees in the woods along like a dirt trail and just follow some riders like riding it. So it would look like hopefully like this like a scene from Star Wars where the stormtroopers are like they're on those Land Cruisers.
Yep.
Those speed bikes in the weaving in and out of the tree. So I feel like it could get like I don't know the top speed, but it's literally like an electric skateboard motor. So it could probably get up to maybe 30 miles an hour, maybe even more, depending on the battery that I put in it. So
Yep.
it would be cool to just set this in the woods and like film someone like running or on a bike, just like cruising and just like have it just track them. So
Yeah.
that's the next step. But yeah, I'm going to work on a video pretty soon, just showing some test footage and like a walkthrough about how it works.
Yeah, like I know however and whenever and wherever the first application of that is in a show setting, and like you said, there's so many like liability issues. I know like Joe and the people running This Is Hardcore are just like, I don't know if there's a chance that will be happening at that specific venue. So maybe there's, other places and other fests that would be open to that. But yeah, like there's a lot of things in place when you're seeing this giant like metal piece just floating above people swinging their arms and legs.
Yeah, we were going to actually use it for the third Code Orange live stream.
Yep.
I basically had it finished for that. I told them, I was like, all right, guys, I'm going to get this done and we're going to use it. And they were so stoked about it. But when we got to the venue, we were looking, there was actually no way of suspending a cable securely for this thing. Because the whole thing with the camera weighs at least 20 pounds.
Yeah.
Off the top of my head, I don't know what that is in kilograms for for you, but it's not light. So finding a way to suspend a cable that's able to like hold that weight is pretty tough. So we got to the venue, we're like, fuck, we can't use it. So I was pretty bummed because it would have looked. I think it would have looked cool for that stream that we did, because the way that they had the environment set up, it would have been amazing just to have that thing like flying through that space. So
like that stream specifically was definitely like a maximalist. Like there were so many things going on, so it would have been cool, but at the same time there were so many things compiled that it wasn't like, oh, something's missing here. There was a lot of things going on. You brought up Star Wars there, and I wanted to ask you, are you not into Phantom Menace? Because when you did that stream with No Option, there was the ending where you were stepping on the Phantom Menace, and everyone's like, "No, Sonny." I was like,
"Yeah, I don't like the prequels, to be honest." I recently sat down, maybe like 2 months ago. I sat down and watched all 9 plus all of like the one-offs, like the solo story. Like I just sat down and watched all of them, and I was like, "Yeah, I still don't like the prequels. I just can't do it." So,
yeah, it's. Do you think that's just a generational thing? Because I know it's going to be a polar opposite, like a 50-50 split of people who are like, no, they're like, yes, there's moments, but there's moments in these movies, and there's people that just
probably like I remember, I think when I was a kid, they were airing the original trilogy in theaters. So I saw the first time I saw it was probably on TV, but the prequels are the first like Star Wars I got to see premiere in the theater. So at the time I was like, damn, this is cool. But looking back, there's like some corny CGI. A lot of it is the way that George Lucas revised the original trilogy, like adding CGI where it wasn't in the original, that it really soured, like it left a bad taste in my mouth. So when I was watching the prequels, I was like, this motherfucker already ruined the original trilogy. Like, I don't know. I had a lot of negative feelings about it growing up. I mean, like I said, I just watched it. It was fine the second time around, but I don't love it. So that's probably what motivated me to like step on that tape when they gave it to me.
So here's the question on that: is George Lucas's prequels better or worse than Disney's trilogy after the main three?
Those last three are pretty bad.
Yeah.
They fucked up a lot. If I had to choose, I would say I would take the prequels over those last three. Those last three, like I don't know what the fuck they were thinking.
Yeah. It was a weird aspect of watching JJ make a safe Star Wars movie, Rian Johnson making an absolute what the fuck, and then JJ trying to salvage everything that Rian like screwed up to kind of try to bring around a 3-part movie.
Yeah, Ryan definitely fucked it up. I saw people calling J.J. Abrams Jar Jar Abrams, which I thought was really funny. So I kind of like, I can't think of him without thinking that. So I think he's got to live with that.
Yeah. Is it a dead giveaway that Admiral Akbar is your favorite Star Wars character?
100%. You can't see it, but behind the camera is a little Admiral Akbar shrine painted by various artists that I like. There's four pieces, 4 different Akbar pieces. I have a signed, somewhere there, a signed Admiral Akbar mask that was signed by Tim Rose, the original puppeteer for Admiral Akbar.
Okay.
Yeah. Interesting.
So. Yeah, I know you've jumped in with that mask a number of times. I think you made that I don't know if it was like officially. I think the original video is a TikTok, but I don't know if you made your own TikTok, but it was just like you with that, and it's the girls like freaking out, and the dad's like, "No way."
The Bane video, yeah. So I try to bring it out whenever I need something really stupid. It's a lot of the shit that I do is for my own amusement. Like I don't even know if people are gonna find it funny because I honestly don't care. For me, it's just I find humor in knowing that I just subjected like my entire like viewer base to that stupid piece of humor. So that's what I do it for. I do it for my own enjoyment.
No, I think it's good. I would love to see more Sonny Akbar in the future. Depending on how more we have to go through this pandemic, we might see more of that. I know we have chatted about this topic a number of times in the DMs, and you've touched on it in some other interviews as well. But with filming the amount of bands that you do, naturally you're going to run into people that are overcritical of themselves or their own band's image, and they might say, "Hey, Sonny, we had like this fill-in bass player, and we didn't think that he did a great job. Can you not post that set?" Or almost finding reasons not to post it versus like what are the benefits of actually having a set on your site. So I know that there's been times for me where I get caught off guard about that, and we talked about just like it's not your job to like curate a band's image or reputation. So talk to me a little bit about that for the folks at home that might be the first time that they're hearing that.
Yeah, some bands they want to do that. They want to curate their image to a T. They want to make sure everything's fine-tuned before it goes out. I don't agree with that. I'm also not a musician, so I can't really speak to it. So I can imagine this is a situation where like, damn, we played horribly, or half the band was fill-ins. Like this doesn't represent us. I get that, but as someone who's documenting it, I do think it's important and part of the story, because the way I look at it, like if I love Inside Out. So if someone were to be like, hey, I'm sitting on an Inside Out tape from 89, but it's basically like a bunch of scab fill-ins and they fucked up 2 of the songs, I'd be like, I don't fucking care. I want to see it. Like, I'm so upset. It comes from being so obsessed with live recordings that I don't care about the performance, because for me, hardcore and punk is meant to be unpolished and grimy and unfinished. Mm-hmm. And so in that sense, I don't take issue with it. Like, I think like everything is worth being documented, but like I finally got to a point where when bands really push back, I'm like, all right, I'm not going to fight this. So I'm now going to go take a piss, or like, if a band tells me like before the set, like, hey, don't film us. We have a fill in. I'm going to go take my piss break that I never get to take. So I'm at a point now where I'm like, okay, I'll take it. But there was a while where I'd really fight it. I'd be like, hey, do you really want to cut it? Because there was already someone filming in the crowd with their phone and they uploaded it. So it's already up. So what's the point? It's already out there. So I don't know. I deep down have an issue with it, but I don't fight it as much. And the way I look at it, like I still sit on those recordings, and maybe one day they're going to be like, hey, if you have anything else that you're sitting on, just post it. So
Yeah.
it's something that I plan. It's not a lot that I'm sitting on I've been asked to not post, but I mean, as unfortunate as it is, like every time someone in a band passes away, it's like, damn, whoever's sitting on footage of the band should really dig it up and post it, because like it would be an honor for that person's memory to live on through as many of those live recordings as possible. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I feel like with time, some bands might come around being like, damn, I wish we had more footage. And then they'll remember like, oh, we asked so-and-so to not post that set. So yeah. I don't know. I think we're in an age right now where people really care about how they're portrayed on social media, especially given how much like currency is tied into a social media's presence. Like social media can make or break your band. So I think that a lot of bands in a way are justified in terms of trying to make sure that what goes out is what they want to put out there. So I see both sides to it. As a documentarian, like I take issue with it, but from a band's perspective, who's trying to maintain a certain level of maybe a certain level of mystery or whatever, I get it. So I'm constantly, honestly, I'm constantly just like wavering between the two. But yeah, in the last few years, my mindset has been, you don't want it, okay? Like I'd rather not push it and sour a relationship with the band, just so that I can satisfy my impulse to like be thorough with my documentation.
Yeah, I think it is like, you know, kind of when to pick your battles to like really like push a band. And like sometimes it's just a band that maybe just doesn't see the value of like a documented set, because like there's been multiple times where it's one set that you film of a certain band, of a certain like performance that like changes the trajectory for a band for forever. And I think that's like really crazy on how like, you know, there's so many bands that you filmed in like certain moments where, you know, whether it's like a specific Code Orange set or, you know, the Vane Windbreaker, This Is Hardcore set that like really like propels people, just that makes it highly shareable, and it just pushes that, like, you know, there's that meme, I'm sure you've seen it, where it's like, you know, the power level and the top one is like, I was at that show. And I think the one above that no one talks about is like, I filmed that show.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
But I think it is crazy, just like how, you know, I've seen that a number of times, you know, whether it's a band that I've filmed for the first time or like a band that I've filmed 10, 15 times. I am curious because like there's definitely bands that you film on the regular, just being in like the Philadelphia area, like, you know, Jesus Peace, Eternal Sleep, Code Orange, or, you know, a few that come to mind. You know, you say that Hate5six is a one-man operation based nowhere. If you could relocate Hate5six in a world where we actually did have shows for a year, to be in a different market and film bands that you normally might only get the chance to do once a year, whereabouts would that be?
Good question. I love Japan. I've been there twice now. And all of the shows I've seen there have been amazing. So that would be near the top of my list, but I haven't done any shows in the South, like Texas or anything like that. So I would love to do that. Certain parts of California would be cool, but I would say probably, yeah, maybe like, because I've done a little bit of Europe. I've never done South America or Indonesia. Mm-hmm. So probably definitely a place where I haven't been. Yeah, that's a good question.
Because you're trying to value like the activity of shows, and I think naturally like where you go and where your, you know, influence grows, like that will feed into the culture and the scene there. But, you know, that, you know, you're also trying to think about like, when I'm not filming shows, like, is it warm there? Is it cold there? What can I do during the day?
Yeah, no, that's a valid thing. I mean, when I was starting to do these, like, I was calling them like residency programs, basically. Like I was trying to travel a lot, and I did travel a bunch just to film fests or small shows in I did like, I came out to Wild Rose. I came out to Oklahoma for Prom Corps. Did did a stop in Chicago. So I was starting to like go out and like I was starting to do this like regular thing of just traveling somewhere new and filming not just the fest, but then staying a day or two and trying to film some local shows around it as well. So that's what I really wanted to, if this pandemic hadn't hit, I was really aiming, and I had flights booked to keep doing this, basically just to hop around, spend a weekend or a week in various cities, document as much as I could, and then hop to the next one and just keep going as far as I could with it. So that's really, if I could do it, I would probably do that over relocating for a year somewhere, but I don't know. I think Japan I'd probably do for a year. I would love to do Japan for a year.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
Yeah. That is like an aspect. Like I had, I'm thinking back when I had, her name is Doll. She's in a band called Fuse from Singapore. And so we were talking about just like the scene there and like, even just like the infrastructure of like, we don't have basements to have band practice. Like everyone's in apartment complexes. So there's aspects of the world where it's cool to think like, I would like to travel here, not only to see the culture and like change a landscape, but like also to see like the hardcore music scene there. And I think that's just a weird thing in most people's brains who are listening to this podcast, where like a lot of people would be like, no, I just want to go here to eat food and be in warm weather. And it's like, I want to get in a grimy basement with a bunch of strangers and listen to loud music in another language even.
Sorry, was there a question there?
No, I was okay. Taking a sip. That was fine. You brought up, I actually, I did want to chat about that. A shift you made with Hate5six as far as like how the content was released was like you were taking your personal want out of the equation and making it purely democratic, having people vote for sets on a daily basis. So what was really cool is that you filmed Wild Rose one weekend, and then you flew to Oklahoma and did Promcore. Oh, no, sorry. I'm doing this out of order. You did Wild Rose, and then went to Chicago to do the Rumble, and then you went to Oklahoma to do Promcore. And all those sets all those fests have different tenures as far as like how long they've been going and different things like that. But what was crazy is that just even like a week, maybe 2 weeks after like those 3 weekends of shows, I started to see a lot of Promcore sets coming out. And I remember you mentioning on how a lot of the members in that scene really rallied together of, maybe these aren't the most hype bands out of all those festivals, but the most people out of all those fests jumped on your Patreon, were voting for stuff to really push it. So talk to me about like, were you surprised that happened, or were people telling you that was the game plan going into it?
No, so that was my hypothesis with doing this sort of like residency program is, traveling to places where there are bands that I haven't filmed before. Because again, I think what makes Hate5six valuable, or just any channel that documents music valuable, is the ability for people to find new music. So what I really liked about the Oklahoma Promcore Fest was there were so many bands there that I hadn't filmed. Mm-hmm. And my hypothesis was, if I go there, if these people are excited enough to have a video on the channel, then theoretically they will be the ones to sign up to boost those videos to get them out sooner than later. And that's exactly what happened. Like a lot of those people signed up immediately and were hyping it up because they knew the value of getting those videos out sooner than later. So they really rallied together, and they voted for their own band. They voted for all the other bands that played the fest. So it was a cool demonstration in community. And that's part of the reason why I do the voting thing, is just to see like it gives control back to the community, whether it's the entire hardcore community or a specific scene who's rallying together to get all of those videos out. And so many bands from that fest that I covered had a huge boost in downloads and merch sales and show offers and things like that. Like almost every band I think that played that was hitting me up being like, dude, we just leveled up whatever it was in terms of plays, streams, whatever it was. So many of those bands, they saw that level of community commitment to get the content out actually did pay off for them. So for me, that was cool. And that was the moment where I was like, all right, you know what, this idea of democratizing the site and then like traveling to different places to document new bands can be a really symbiotic thing. Sure. And that's where I was really trying to go with it. So it was cool that in my head, I wanted it to happen, and I'm glad that it actually worked out that way.
Yeah, it was just like really cool to see, like, you know, like I know a bunch of people from Wild Worlds were doing that too, but it just seemed like Promcore as this like smaller scene with like bands that are very, very sick. Like shout out to all the Oklahoma homies who are listening to this. But, you know, just being a more underrated scene as far as like being in the South and not having that like New York hardcore, LA hardcore, like that kind of like that title to them really push them to like, no, we're gonna use this opportunity to just like get the name out. And you know, I feel like that's a great segue too. You know, you were mentioning bands from there. We're having huge boosts as far as awareness and merch sales and offers. What has been the biggest change that you have given a band off of like one video? Is there one that stands out to you that's like, I posted this and then this band got signed to this label, or this happened, or, you know, anything that comes to mind there?
It's hard to say. I was talking to Code Orange recently, and they said that This Is Hardcore video for them was the game changer. Obviously, it was timed with the record, so the record played a big part. But they will say that record is what like gave them a huge boost. So again, I'm not in a band, so it's hard for me to say with certainty. But like that video did that. I want to say the Vane video with the Windbreakers helped them quite a bit. The Harm's Way running meme. I didn't start the meme, but that video, like that's now the most watched video on the site. It's got like 1.5 million views. And I think Bo posted their like 2020 Spotify streams, basically the stats. And the day that the meme was at peak virality, that was like
one of those.
That was the day that they had the most streams. So
wow,
it's tough to say. I mean, Jesus Piece has said that these videos have like taken them places. So I don't know. It's hard for me to say because I'm the one who's like producing the content, and I'm not the consumer or the demographic who's like discovering the bands through it. But I don't know. I would say those examples are probably among the most prominent. I think Closet Witch also had like a pretty big bump from that video. So it depends. And it also depends how you want to measure that growth. Is it in streams? Is it in like a record deal or show offers? There's so many different like ways of measuring that benefit. But I would say that the videos, mine or anyone's videos in general, like they do move the needle in all of those directions. Whether, I mean, it could be a small move, but a video that's shot well of a band that's playing well has the ability to make significant moves in all those dimensions.
Yeah, I hard agree on that. You brought up the Harm's Way Running Man meme, and I thought that was a very interesting, just how that exploded, because that set wasn't like brand spanking new, if I remember correctly. It was like a little dated, and then it was just it was actually, I think the guy that runs the meme page, his name is Spencer too, and he's Canadian. So shout out to Spencer if you're listening. But he just went back in time and grabbed that because like the Running Man aspect of that one part in that song, that's in plenty of other Harm's Way sets on the internet, but it was just that specific one at that time. And that got my brain turning. It's like, how many things that you or I film, or anyone out there films, that someone in the future will go back in time and watch it and be like, oh, that's kind of funny, make a meme, and then that band blows up more. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, I think there's definitely power to that. The way, I mean, it's crazy seeing how that unfolded, and I'm actually surprised it doesn't happen more often. But you're right. I'm sure that as people dig into this stuff, like in the future, it would be cool to see like 10 years from now, whatever, someone digging up an old clip of. There's a clip of the Rival Mob, Brendan from the Rival Mob throwing up at This Is Hardcore 2011. And I've posted it. It goes viral, but like it would be funny as hell if someone like turned that into a meme and that band just like blew the fuck up again.
Right.
So stuff like that I would love to see that when I'm older, looking back like, oh shit, there's new life is being pumped into this old clip.
Yeah. Something that anyone that has been following Hate5six is like, you are very upfront that you sometimes will be passive aggressive with people who are either trolling you or hating on you for a reason that is unbeknownst to you. Has that always just been the attitude over time, or do you find a fine line of like, okay, I'm gonna put so and so on blast, and other people are just like, I'll just delete your comment or whatever?
Yeah, I think I went through this came up on a podcast recently. It's not out yet, but I think I've gone through three phases in my like career or whatever doing Hate5six. I first started out wanting everyone to like me, just like doing whatever I could just to appease everyone, not ruffle any feathers. Second phase was, dealing with the backlash and really lashing out at people, just being in your face, aggressive, and trying to combat their negative energy with fire.
Sure.
And I feel like the third phase that I'm in now is more of a zen where I'm just like, you don't like me? Cool. What are you going to do about it? You're just going to go keep watching my videos. So it literally doesn't matter. Like whatever you say, nothing has torn me down yet. And it's not going to. So I feel like I'm in this phase now. I'm just like, I literally laugh it off. It's funny. And some people are like, dude, why do you even post it? So for me, the reason I post some of the comments that I get is one, to expose that there are people that have these opinions.
Sure.
And two, I just find it fucking funny. Be like, you're literally so upset about something I said, a political opinion I have, that you're taking time out of your day to attack me. That's how obsessed you are with whatever it is that I'm doing. And I'm still going to do what I'm doing. Like, it's not going to stop this.
Right.
And you're still consuming my content. So I still win.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the phase that I'm in now. It's tough. I mean, there's days where just like, it's exhausting getting some of that backlash. It's like, dude, what the fuck? Seriously, another one of these messages? But I'm trying my best to just let it roll off over, just let it roll and not pay it too much attention.
Do you have that that meme that you made with the cow sucking on the cow? Do you have that on your desktop, like airdrop to your phone, like just on deck whenever you need it?
I have it on deck on my phone. I have a hard link on the Hate5six site that I know where it is. I have a folder of pre-made memes on there. So there's that one. There's the meme. There's the Eminem meme from the video Stan, where Stan, I'm sure people know what it is, but Stan is the stalker fan who gets really mad at Eminem.
Sure.
So there's a meme of Stan. The top panel is Stan angry and he's writing something. The bottom panel is him holding an iPad and it has a picture of Hate5six on it.
Yep.
So I use that one a lot. During the Wild Rose video when what was her name? Why am I blanking on her name? She gave the speech. Yeah, Jess. Yeah. Sorry, Jess. If you're watching, I'm sorry. She gave that speech, and people got really mad about it, about women in hardcore. And I posted a meme where it was basically Stan one panel, and the bottom panel was him holding the iPad of the video playing, and it really encapsulated that. So I have a couple of those memes pre-made because, again, I feel like it really embodies this attitude of just like, you're so mad about this thing, but you're still watching, and your engagement on the post is only boosting the post. And again, my objective, ultimately my objective with Hate5six is that it's a platform where I produce content, whether it's a band or a political rally or a speech. And my objective is to get that content in front of as many eyes as possible. And in order to do that, the algorithms across all these platforms require engagement. Yeah. So whenever I get backlash, I take a step back. I tell myself, one, it doesn't matter because I'm still doing this. They're not stopping me. Two, they're feeding the algorithm the food that it needs in order to boost the post. So that's the new philosophy that I have. Is just like, I welcome it. And sometimes I'll honestly just stir the pot a little bit and just, for the most part, I've stopped reading comments. Every now and then I'll just like scan through it and maybe respond to one or two, but sometimes I'll just like light a match, let it burn and walk away. Come back later, see that a post has 12,000 views. Like, all right, it worked. So, okay.
I know, sometimes you go like full on detective mode because I know that there was that. I'm blanking on the context of some of these things, but you found the guy's YouTube channel based off of like a Call of Duty montage, and you were like matching usernames. Can you bring me up to speed and the listeners as well?
Forget how I did it. He was some kid talking.
You put
trash.
This mind map on on your story. I was like, what the fuck?
He was talking. He was actually saying some racist stuff about me, and he was making like a fake YouTube channel and like posting racist videos about me. And I was like, this was me pre Zen mode. So I was like peak, just like, I'm gonna fucking destroy this kid. So I think I cross-referenced his Twitter name to his gamer tag, and then cross-referenced that with YouTube, and then did some like reverse searching, found his photo, and if you dig through, there's a post somewhere. I think it's on my story still under,
like a highlight or something.
I think it's still highlighted on my Instagram. It's called like trash pickup or something, where it just shows the whole, like, I connect the dots from here to here, and I found his name, and I think he was so mad that I found out his name, because he was just like, fuck you, dude. I'm like, dude, I literally got you. I literally found out your fucking name and know where you live. Like, and he doesn't even go to shows. And I knew it. I knew that this was a kid who doesn't even go to shows. In a couple of years, he was going to grow out of it, because he's just some random kid who just discovered hardcore, probably from one of my videos. That's why one of the negative things about running the channel is, like, yeah, it's bringing in new people to the scene, but it's also bringing a lot of fucking shitty people who don't know anything about, like, the ethics or the, just
like the moral standing,
the basic
of
moral decorum of the scene, and they just come in being like, I don't like this person, I'm gonna talk shit. So that's probably one of the negative things about running the channel. But yeah, so I ended up reversing that, and I think that comes from, like, I use those same techniques whenever I get like a VHS tape from someone and I don't know where the show was or when it was. I use those same tactics to figure out exactly when and where the video was. So I get into like CSI detective mode with it. And if I need to out someone who's coming at me, I'll fucking do it. Like, I'm so petty with this shit that I will stop editing for a day and just spend my entire day to track a motherfucker down and put them on blast.
Yeah.
Like, people don't know the depths that I will go in order to just put someone on blast.
Yeah. No, I think it's hilarious, because a lot of people are like, just like let it go. But I'm like, no, Sonny is like a madman and knows so much about technology that he will find you. It's like the Taken speech, but it's just your face. Like, I will find you and I'll put you on blast.
Yeah.
You brought it up as far as, like, sometimes you'll get a tape or you'll get a recording of a show and you don't know all the details, because that's a huge thing of, like, that I've learned from you of being an archivist, is like, the date of the show, the venue, the city, like, all of that, like, really matters in the actual, like, putting it in the video for people to see, to get the context of it. When was the actual first time that you actually realized, like, I have a sizable enough audience that I can, like, put it out into the ethos? Like, hey, did anyone like, tell me about the first time that happened? Because you do it so often over the years that it's still so impressive to me that it's like, you can do that, and then someone will be like, hey, my friend was at this show, and then all the everything lines up.
Yeah, I don't remember the first time that I did it. I actually got a Facebook notification of a memory like 6 or 7 years ago, whenever Facebook first started doing facial tagging.
Yeah.
I had a still photo of someone filming a Damnation AD set, and so my post was, the caption was, I'm posting this picture to see if Facebook will automatically tag the filmer so I can track them down and ask them for. So I'm constantly trying to use technology to subvert technology as a way to, like, find out, like, the identity of a filmer. Mm-hmm. It didn't work, but I think in that example, someone saw the post, was like, oh, I recognize that person, that's so-and-so, reach out to them. So that, I don't know if that was the first one, but over the years, I've been able to just post a clip, and it'll be as simple as, hey, even if you weren't at the show, maybe you'll recognize the venue. Yeah. And that gives me a clue. And it's kind of like peeling the layers back. It's just like, all you need is just like one clue, and that opens the door for the next set of clues. So yeah, I don't remember the first time I did that, but it's been effective. I mean, it's like asking the hive mind, because the way I look at it, it's like Hate5six. It's a community. Again, going back to the community, it's like, if I can crowdsource this information, it makes my job easier. It helps people get the content faster. And there's so many people who follow the channel now. Someone somewhere was either at the show or took pictures of it or knows about it or recognizes any clue about it that they can then tell me. And that'll take me to the next step in order to find out the rest of the information.
Yeah, it's crazy, because I don't remember what set or, series of sets that you were trying to get, but it was like just showing the windows of like a
that was the Drop Dead set from Rhode Island. I think they played it was something in Providence. They played a college in Rhode Island, and I tracked down the gymnasium at the school, and I found a recent Google Maps image of the exterior. Yeah. And I matched the window layout with the interior shot. That there was a frame in the video that had the same shots. And then I contacted the archives department at the university saying, hey, do you have anything in your archives advertising a show in this range? Because I think there was some clue in the video that it was maybe in the springtime, whether it was someone wearing a t-shirt. There was some clue about it being the springtime. And I knew roughly the year. So I contacted the archives department. I said, hey, do you have anything? They actually tracked down the student newspaper from that year being like, oh, here's the show. It was advertised on this date. And that's when I was just like, boom, boom, boom. Got it.
It's crazy. Just like, yeah, it's just so impressive to see that. And, utilizing the community that you have to like, let's figure this out together. And, is there any unsolved mysteries that you're still trying to, chase down certain clues?
Oh, constantly. So someone just gave me a Norma Jean set from, I forget what year, but it was the first set after the singer quit the band.
Oh,
and so apparently it was the next day somewhere in the Chicago suburb, and they had a fill-in guy play. So right now I'm trying to track down. Does anyone know a rough date of when so-and-so, I forget the guy's name, when he left the band? Because that'll at least narrow it down. For me, it's about divide and conquer. Because like if I know the year, that gives me 12 months. But if I can find like a clue that tells me that it was the winter or the spring or whatever it is, that narrows it down from 12 months to like a shorter window.
Yeah.
And it's about iteratively trying to narrow down that window smaller and smaller and smaller until I can pinpoint roughly the date. That's how I look at it. It's just like you start out with this wide search, because I come from like a computer science background. So I'm constantly thinking about like optimal ways of searching. You have this large search space, you got to split it down to a smaller chunk. It's all about breaking things down into smaller digestible chunks and trying to like really narrow it down. So right now I'm trying to figure that one out. Someone's sending me a couple tapes, I think pretty soon. They don't remember the exact dates, but that's going to be another thing. So whenever people are sending me tapes, I ask them, how well are the tapes labeled and how good is your memory in terms of figuring it out? Because that's going to, that's going to determine how much effort I need to put in to track that stuff down. So eventually I want to build something on the site where I could just like upload short clips and then post it out there. And then people can go on there and identify. And ideally I want to turn it into a game where you log on, you're presented with a bunch of clips, and then you can label it. Like if you recognize the venue, you write down the venue name. If you recognize the date, you write down the date. And that's a way of crowdsourcing it, but turning it into a game where viewers can like accrue points, and maybe those points could be used on the voting system, or they could subscribe to the Patreon using a certain number of like points that they've received. So I want to start getting into that world where whenever I have a problem, like I just throw it, I turn it into a game, put it out there. Maybe I can build like an app. People can just on their phone, they can just play the game, and it's part of the task of labeling the information that I need in order to properly index the video on the site. So I've had that idea for a couple of years now, and maybe I'll start working on it. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. As far as things that you are, have integrated into Hate5six or wanting to, I remember vividly at Wild Rose, it was in between bands and we were just like shooting the shit on the side of the stage, and you're like, yo, check this out. And you whip up your laptop and you start tethering like a hotspot on your phone, and you start signing in to like the Hate5six server. And you were showing me on like how the automation side of everything works. And you've talked about it on other podcasts, but like talk to me about just like the way, like how much time has that actually saved you on a day-to-day basis where you don't have to think about like, I got to upload it to YouTube and take that link. Cause I find myself in a constant state of like always having to give an hour or 2 hours of my day to doing that when I'm posting a podcast or, when shows come back, sets, but like, why was it so critical for you, like seeing that and being like, this is an inefficiency of my process and I need to refine that?
Yeah, when I first started, I was doing everything manually, just manually uploading, manually updating and entering a database just so it shows up on the site, manually posting stuff on social media. And then like I built what's now the voting system. It started out as a notification system. So if you wanted to be notified via email when a video went up, you just sign up with your email, and an email is automatically blasted out to you. Yeah. And then I realized, that's a way of just tracking interest in a video. I can turn that into a voting thing, and I could tabulate the votes, remove myself from the equation of deciding when a video goes up, democratize the process, boom, 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 done. So it wasn't that I had the idea from the get-go to automate things. It was just slowly over time being like, damn, I'm spending so much time literally logging onto a database to add the entry that has the thumbnail link, the video link, and the date, venue, things like that. And I was like, I can write some code that just does that. Yeah. And so it's something that has taken 13 years. It didn't take me 13 years to code, but it took me 13 years to realize okay, I can automate this and that's going to free up 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours of my day. And that's going to give me that time to then work on something new. Um, I don't know how much time. I mean, I'm sure it's probably a couple hours that I save now
Yeah,
a
per day
day.
for sure.
Per
Yeah.
day. I probably save a couple hours just not having to worry about queuing and uploading. And that's how I'm able to just like focus more on doing other shit, whether it's like finishing my skycam or digitizing more tapes or just doing whatever, filming more shows. Like I don't have to worry about that stuff. So I don't have a concrete number, but it's definitely a couple hours a day where I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
There are times where like Facebook or Twitter will update the way that code is integrated on their site. Then I have to go back and spend a day or two just revamping my code. So there are days where I have to just like stop, halt all operation and just get the code back up and running. So for the most part, it's just like set it and forget it. But every now and then I do need to revisit it and like work out some bugs and things like that. So that's kind of where it's at.
It's pretty crazy. Like, I have moments where I can remember vividly like filming a festival and like make like on my computer tethering to make sure I could post it on YouTube and all that. And I remember on I think it was on Jamie Orquette's podcast where you're talking about like, yeah, I'm going to like Japan and Australia, and like I'm just gonna like everything that's queued is gonna be posted, and ultimately all you couldn't set on autopilot was just like Instagram. So like all the Facebook posting was all the same, and then it's just like you go on a Wi-Fi and post the video, and Bob's your uncle. Everything is done on your part. So I think it's very cool, and I really feel like I'm not a computer science, like, knowing all that coding aspect, but I'm like, this would save me so much time on the daily if I actually knew how to just set up even something like a basic diet version of what you have.
People have asked over the years if I could if this is something I could sell, but the way that it's currently integrated, it's just so tied into the site that there's just so much specific code. Like I could probably, I don't know, it would take some work to generalize it in such a way that just someone else could like take it and integrate it. Cause it's so tied to like how I've structured how videos are organized on my channels, whether it's Vimeo or YouTube and things like that. Or even my database is just so specific to how I do it. So I don't know, maybe one day I'll spend some time just like separating it out from being so tethered to the site and make it into like a standalone thing that I could then license out or just to give away to people who want who could use it. But yeah, it's been a fun project. I tell anyone, like, if you want to learn coding, like it's a fun project to just, even you don't obviously like not building the full thing in one day, but just like building a Twitter bot that like tweets out random shit. Like there's ways of just starting from somewhere and then just like building it out. Cause like I said, I didn't build all this in one day. It took time to be like, I now know enough programming to do X. Let me go build that. And then realizing, there's these other 3 things that could be automated. Let me try to teach myself how to do the bare minimum to get that done.
Yeah. Well, Sonny, we can start to wrap up the show here. A couple more questions and then we'll, send it off. For anyone who's gotten this far in the podcast, who maybe is on the fence about like, just filming every set of their band or like the level of work that you do, if you wanted to just shoot it real straight, like what is the value or just the importance overall of documenting, whether it's like a hardcore band or just like, documenting your progress of like something that you're trying to do creatively? Just like, what's the importance for you?
I think the value in documenting is seeing growth, whether it's the growth of a band or the growth of a scene, or like you said, if you're working on a project. I document myself working on stuff, and it's cool just to go back and be like, damn, that's where I was a year ago, 6 months ago, whatever it was, and realizing how far you've come. Because in that moment where you're struggling with a problem, you're like, damn, I'm never going to finish this, or I'm never going to know enough to get it done. When you have the ability to actually go back and look at a photograph or look at a video that you filmed of yourself working on something and seeing that you've actually accomplished it and then some, it gives you the ability to then tell yourself the next time you're facing a problem that you can't solve it in that moment, being like, you know what, I was able to solve that other problem with determination. I can probably get through what I'm dealing with now if I just work on it. So I see a lot of value in documenting just for that alone.
Yeah.
And again, whether it's music, just documenting the growth of a scene, seeing, like, watching old Code Orange kids videos, it's amazing. And then seeing them now playing all these crazy shows, it's amazing to see, because it tells a story about determination and growth that is natural and is unfiltered, and it makes that accessible. Because if you're filtering everything, if you're keeping everything polished, it's, for the viewer, it's hard to you can't resonate with that. And that's what I think is so valuable at documenting hardcore and punk and things like that, is you can see a headlining band kill it, but they might fuck up a song, or they might break a string or whatever. And for the viewer, they might not realize it, but it gives them the signal, like, yeah, this band is great, but they're not perfect. That means I could do it. It gives them a sense of, they can picture themselves doing what that band or that person is doing. And there is so much power in that. And that's what I love about putting the stuff that I put out there, is that I hope that whatever I put out there, whether it's a band video or me building something or a political speech, I hope it gives someone the confidence to push outside their own boundaries and try to tackle whatever it is that they're trying to do.
Yeah, no, I think that's beautifully put. I think, like, a lot of what hardcore is like seeing, either someone on stage that that resonates with you, and you're like, oh, I could do that. I could play the drums. I could, scream into a microphone. I could take photos. I can film shows. Like, there's the level of the amount of times that people are inspired at even just one singular hardcore show is so crazy to me. And I think, like, constantly thinking about, like, documenting, I think, even, like, I even heard it from someone I look up to, is like, even if you were just, like, documenting every day of your life, as, like, mundane and tedious as it feels to you, when you have kids or a family in the future, you could be like, hey, this is me when I was, like, 25 or 18 or whatever it is. And, like, your grandkids even can, like, look and to watch, like, you grow up. And, like, some of those things, like, you only think about once you're on the other side of it, versus, like, being in the moment. You're like, yeah, I do want to document this. I want to pull out my phone. I want to pick up my camera. I want to, do whatever. So I think, like you said, like, you actually see true progress versus, like, the white and black difference.
Yeah. I think there's definitely, you run the risk of oversaturating documentation. Sometimes you just got to live in the moment and just, like, do your thing. But sure. I've been, there's that element, but I've been posting a lot of just, like, technical videos on my Instagram stories, like me building a massive storage server. And again, a lot of it is just for me, just so I don't forget how I built it or how I solved X, Y, and Z. And so a lot of it is just for my own purpose, but I put it out there, not expecting anyone to care about it. But I've been getting a lot of messages from people being like, oh shit, this is really interesting. I want to build something like this. I'm going to use these videos as, like, my guide. So it's cool to document for myself, but then to put it out there and realize that, oh, people are actually finding this as a valuable resource, like literally watching me stumble through their shit and trying to figure it out, because it helps them when they want to try to do something similar.
I'm kind of surprised I haven't seen a and I'm sure you've thought about this, but like I think you started it for a bit, but maybe hit pause when COVID hit, but like doing more of like a Hate5six like vlog where you're like showing the day to day. I think you were doing that when you were traveling a little bit more.
Yeah, I was doing those tour vlogs. I would like to do it, and I think I'm starting to do. I just 3D printed a wheelchair for a local kitten that has cerebellar hypoplasia.
Oh, okay.
So I filmed a video of me like sitting down, talking about how I built it. And then I haven't posted it yet because I'm waiting for the kitten to actually learn how to use it so I can get some footage of the kitten running around with it. But my vision right now, and again, like with the upcoming video of me talking about like the skycam, like I want to start doing more of just like, hey, breaking up the video content, breaking up the live show content to be like, hey, here's this sort of thing that's adjacent to Hate5six that I'm working on building on. Maybe you'll find it interesting. More of just like day-to-day shit that I'm working on. So yeah, I miss doing the vlogs. I'm going to try to resurrect it in a new form with mostly just like kind of like behind the scenes technical stuff.
Yeah. And I think like a lot of, I've talked about this with a lot of people in hardcore is like, people don't need to just be the angry guy with the mic. It could be like, you could do that, but also be into, cooking vegan food, or like, having multiple assets to like your characteristics versus like you're just into hardcore and that's the only characteristic of your personality. So I think I'm personally excited to see some of those other aspects of, the Hate5six machine, all those things. Sonny, the last question that I asked all my guests is a favorite mosh story that they would like to share on the podcast. And this doesn't necessarily need to be something that happened to you or that you saw at a show you were filming. It could just be whatever's the first thing to your mind. I know that you have so many things to pull from. So if you have a couple stories for us, that'll be allowed.
The most recent trip to Japan, Corey, everyone who knows Corey, Silverback on Instagram, he came with us with Jesus Peace. And the first few shows, he was, people mosh hard in Japan, like really hard. Corey was going off. There were rumors that people were like, how dare he come here? I'm not knocking Japan, because apparently this was coming from people who didn't even go to the shows. It was just like random shit talkers on the internet.
Right.
Apparently they have them in Japan, but they were like, I heard he was doing this. How dare he come to our country and do that? Blah 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 blah. But everyone at the shows was really welcoming to Corey, and they loved seeing him go off. But so there was some chatter about him moshing too hard, and then there was that incident at Blood Axe Fest during Jesus Peace, and I got the perfect shot of it where Corey jumps on stage, he tries choking Aaron. Aaron pushes him and then drop kicks Corey, sends Corey flying in the air into the crowd.
Yeah.
It's one of the most iconic shots I've ever gotten. And if you were there, I heard a visible like cheer and applause from the crowd. And I don't know if they were just excited that Aaron nailed that drop kick, or if it came from people being like, that motherfucker got what he deserved from moshing too hard the night before in Nagoya.
Right.
I don't know. In my head, I was probably a little bit of both, but that's up there in terms of just, it was so funny. And the next day I posted a video of just like Corey, I posted a fake funeral video with Corey, and I thought that was really funny. So we had a lot of fun with that.
Yeah.
But that's, as of right, it always changes. There's always a funnier story, but right now that's like sitting at the top of my list.
Yeah. I remember when Corey actually came on the podcast, I think 10 or so episodes ago, and he was talking about being in Japan, and like, sometimes you're like, okay, this isn't my scene. I'm not going to just like smack down on everyone, but like, he will go off at times when he's feeling it for sure. And yeah. The memes from that were just too good to pass up.
They're so good.
Well, Sonny, this has been an absolute treat. I really appreciate you being the last guest on, the first season of this podcast. It's obvious that like Scope wouldn't exist without, you, and I appreciate you just providing insight and just like recommendations over the years, and, you and your work mean a lot to me, and I really appreciate you just, being on this 100th episode, 99, whatever you want to call it. So,
yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad we finally got to make it happen. So thank you for having me.
Of course. Any final plugs, places you want to send people after this episode wraps up? The floor is yours for whatever you want to end on.
If you want to follow me, it's Hate5six, the word hate, the number 5, the word 6 on all social media. Although some kid took it on Instagram or on TikTok. There's a kid who took it.
Really?
He's what do they call it? Is it astroturfing, or he parked it? He basically has it. He's got like 3 followers. I think he's some kid in Indonesia. So I don't plan on using TikTok, but I last night I was like, oh, maybe I should sign up, and I saw he had it. It's like, fuck it, shit.
Oh,
so
he's gonna like flip it, like people.
He's probably gonna flip it, yeah. So I don't know what's gonna happen with that. If you want to support the work that I'm doing, it's patreon.com/hate5six. If you want to see a list of all the upcoming videos, it's hate5six.com/vote. I update that basically daily. Anytime I get a new collection of tapes, I put it on there. I start working on them. You can go on there, see the estimated publication, the estimated release date. You can vote to change the release date. So all that good stuff. Yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah, all that info will be in the description, in the show notes. Sonny, you're a beast. I appreciate you, and thanks for coming on the podcast.
Awesome. Thanks so much.